This is Margaret Chase Smith. Margaret Chase Smith belonged to what party? Yes, she's a Republican. She's a senator from Maine. Margaret Chase Smith is addressing her colleagues. When she begins, Mr. President, whom is she addressing? Yes, the President of the Senate. This is not an address to the President of the United States. It's an address to the President of the Senate. The United States Senate has long enjoyed worldwide respect as the greatest deliberative body in the world, but recently that deliberative character has too often been debased to the level of a forum of hate and character assassination, sheltered by the shield of congressional immunity. So you should know that when you are a member of the House of Representatives or of the Senate and you speak on the floor of either of those chambers, you are fundamentally immune from the laws of libel and slander. That is to say, you are able to say, as she explains in the next paragraph, that you are protected in your speech in a way that no one else is. But Margaret Chase Smith's concern is that apparently on the floor of the Senate, senators have been saying things about other Americans in a manner that frightens her. And the senators have been able to do that because they enjoy a certain kind of immunity for doing so when they're speaking in the Senate. In other words, she is indicting some of her colleagues, unspoken, for crossing a line in the Senate chamber itself. And she doesn't say my Democratic colleagues, because I think she has in mind some of her Republican colleagues as well. She is worried about the entire tenor of where Senate discussion and debate has gone. In the paragraph before that, she says, I speak as a Republican, I speak as a woman, I speak as a United States Senator, I speak as an American. And this repetition and self-identification will echo throughout the entire speech. She says, the American people are sick and tired of being afraid to speak their minds lest they be politically smeared as communists or fascists by their opponents. And this is what Amy Gutman says extreme rhetoric tends to do. It tends to create these labels, and it then tends to identify people with those labels without examining them very closely. There are key words. Communist is a key word, fascist is a key word, Nazi is a key word. They're all drawn from the vocabulary of what in American politics has generally been considered to be in a more extreme position. So 1950, is that a presidential election or is that a midterm election? Midterm, yes, this is a midterm election. So she's getting ready to talk about the midterms. This speech is given in June. The midterms are coming up in November. But I do not want to see the Republican Party ride to political victory on the four horsemen of calumny. What is calumny?
I believe it's a form of untruth, a lie.
Yes. Could you be any more specific? That's a good guess.
I think slanderous
yes,
lies.
It has to do with personal attack of an untruthful kind. Exactly. Yes. Not just something that's untrue or a lie. Calumny is something that you are accusing someone of in a harsh way, which very often does turn out to be false. And when it's used in this sense, she means it is false. Now, where does the image the four horsemen come from? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Four horsemen of the apocalypse in religious scripture are not very pleasant characters. They destroy a country, they destroy a people. Fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear. Now, you might figure out your own names for the four horsemen of calumny. The concern here is that fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear will lead to what? There can be a tacit consent given by certain forms of rhetoric for people to act in ways that they otherwise would not act. Proving that link is very hard to do. It's very hard to prove a direct link between certain forms of political rhetoric and violent actions. Because very often the people who take those violent actions are already unstable individuals. However, I would argue that there is a link between political rhetoric and extreme political rhetoric and the atmosphere that can be conducive to certain individuals taking violent actions. It's very hard forensically to prove that, but there are many instances of individuals who have taken violent actions whose notebooks, whose computers, and whose letters are filled with a kind of hateful rhetoric that would not normally be acceptable in the country, but that at times does seem to become acceptable. It's pernicious. And Margaret Chase Smith is trying here to make a case against it. If you have not yet watched the Army McCarthy hearings on the reserved video, please do watch them, because you will see the downfall of Joseph McCarthy in terms of rhetoric. The headnote to this speech, I believe, mentions that it's a man who's actually from Harvard Law School, who is the lawyer for the U.S. Army and defends the U.S. Army against the charges of being filled with communists that McCarthy had leveled at it. And that was a man who finally got McCarthy in a corner in these hearings and said, "At last, sir, have you no decency? Have you no decency?" And McCarthy was left at the table trying to speak while everyone started filing out. He had lost that confrontation in a serious way.